My name is Ashlyn Luisi, and today I'm going to be responding to Nicole Moreno's debates. So, first off, thank you, Nicole, for your points. And I would like to respond really by just clarifying a few misunderstandings about what surrendering sovereignty to humanitarian international law actually means, and further clarifying what it does not mean. First off, I absolutely agree that sovereignty matters. It allows states to govern themselves and respond to threats within their borders. However, surrendering limited aspects of sovereignty to uphold humanitarian international law is not the same as forfeiting all national decision making. It simply means accepting that certain moral and legal obligations, such as preventing genocide, war crimes, ethnic cleansing, crimes against humanity, are more important than an individual state's absolute freedom to act without any sort of accountability. States already limit their sovereignty every day through treaties, trade agreements, and security alliances, and doing so far in humanitarian law is no different. It is a commitment to protecting human life when a state cannot or will not do it on its own. Nicole also raised the point that humanitarian law is unevenly enforced, which she is absolutely correct. International law has historically been enforced inconsistently, but instead of using that inconsistency as a reason to avoid accountability, it's actually an argument for strengthening multilateral systems like the ICC so that enforcement becomes more even, not abandoning them. The solution to unequal justice is not no justice. The solution is improving the mechanisms that hold every state accountable, big or small. And we are already moving in that direction. The ICC's investigation, like those launched into Russia's war crimes, demonstrate that enforcement is no longer exclusively directed at weaker states. While progress may be imperfect, it's undeniably occurring. Nicole argued that if states surrender sovereignty, larger powers will dictate outcomes for smaller states. However, sovereignty as it currently exists already disadvantages smaller states. Absolute sovereignty allows powerful states to intervene, ignore, or even manipulate international norms without consequence. Meanwhile, weaker states are just left vulnerable. Humanitarian international law, when strengthened and universally applied, actually protects smaller nations by establishing clear binding rules that no state is permitted to violate. Surrendering certain aspects of sovereignty doesn't weaken small states, it gives them legal protection, international backing, and a framework to demand accountability from states vastly more powerful than themselves. Furthermore, she suggested that states in different regions face unique security threats and therefore need full sovereignty to respond immediately. But humanitarian law does not prevent states from reacting to emergencies. For example, France did not need UN permission to declare a state of emergency after the 2015 Paris attacks because humanitarian law does not restrict self-defense. Humanitarian law restricts only the methods of warfare. It prevents torture, protects civilians, and ensures humane treatment. Nothing in the Geneva Convention would have prevented France from taking rapid, necessary action to protect its citizens, but rather encouraged it. Sovereignty is not being abolished, it's simply being balanced with humanity. Nicole also raised a concern about democratic, legitimacy, that citizens elect leaders, and surrendering sovereignty may reduce the power of those local leaders. But humanitarian law does not remove domestic political power. States voluntarily join treaties such as the Geneva Conventions. States voluntarily accept ICC jurisdiction, and these decisions are made by elected government officials and will reflect the will of the people who value human rights. In fact, when states refuse to comply with humanitarian law, that is when citizens lose democratic control. They lose transparency, they lose accountability, and they lose trust that their own government will protect human life rather than hide behind sovereignty to justify abuse. One of the most important points that I would love to emphasize is that sovereignty and humanitarian law are not opposites. Humanitarian law exists precisely because of sovereignty, when absolute, and it has allowed some of the worst crime in history to occur. Rwanda is the clearest example. The international community refused to intervene out of respect for sovereignty, and as a result, nearly 800,000 people were murdered. That is not protection, that is abandonment. And when a state fails in its responsibility to protect people, sovereignty cannot be treated as sacred. Human life must come first. Humanitarian law is not about replacing a state's authority. It is about ensuring that no state, no matter how big or how small, can use sovereignty as a shield for atrocity. It creates safeguards, accountability, and moral boundaries that protect civilians everywhere. When states surrender limited sovereignty in this area, they're not weakening themselves, they're strengthening a global system that prevents cycles of violence, displacement, terrorism, and mass suffering. To really sum it all up, respecting humanitarian international law does not erase sovereignty. It refines it, it elevates it. It ensures that sovereignty serves people, not the other way around. Surrendering a degree of sovereignty for humanitarian law is not a loss of power, it is a gain in moral authority, in legitimacy, and in global stability. True sovereignty is not the freedom to commit or ignore atrocities. True sovereignty is the capacity to protect human life and to be held accountable when we fail to do so. I hope this provided some further clarification. Thank you.